All righty. I see people are coming in. Hello. Hey, Victoria. She's our founder. All right. I still see people coming in. So as the room is being populated, Dr. Deja Rose, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, all that good stuff?
Yes, so I'm Dr. Rose. I'm originally from, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm originally from Virginia, the 757. And I went to Georgetown undergrad. I've been a neuroscience nerd forever. That was my major. I bounced around on purpose. I went to Tulane for med school. I did not know that I was going to become an MS neurologist until I was training in Philly. I trained at Jefferson. And then I realized that I fell in love with neuroimmunology and clinical research in it. And so I went to Cleveland Clinic, where I did a 2-year clinical research fellowship there. And then I have now come to Atlanta. So here I am with my 2 kids, 2 dogs, and a husband.
I love that. Um, Well, thank you so much. You mentioned when we were in the waiting room how lovely it is to be surrounded by Black women, and so we loved to educate our community on the importance of having a medical professional who looks like them. So we're so glad that you're here. Let's get the party started. I would love to get into your why. Why did you go into neurology, and what lights you up about the work that you do?
So, like I said before, I've been in love with neuroscience forever. That's what originally got me to neurology. I love the abstract thought, the always, trying to figure out what's new, the pioneering, the frontier, the last frontiers of medicine. We used to think that neurology was, probably still is. And then when I got to the training, I realized that within neurology, neuroimmunology, and especially MS, you have the opportunity to interact with people from a wide variety of ages. And you really have the ability to change how someone's life develops. It makes a difference, especially in MS, where you have the right diagnosis early on. You have the right person listening to the right symptom to give you the right treatment, the right diagnosis, the pathway, all of that. And so it really made me feel like I was not only just interested in neuroscience, but actually participating in improving someone's quality of life from a very early age, as opposed to kind of finding out something later on. And so I like that fight. I like that improvement in quality of life, even if you can't change something. And so that's really appealing.
That's what I really want. Quality of life.
Can we can we have you mute, or were you trying to ask a question, Makeba?
Oh, I meant to mute.
Thank you so much. Um, okay. And ladies, feel free to drop your questions in the chat, engage, like comment, all that stuff. And if you do have a question, I just ask that you put like a Q in front or capitalize the word question so I can just see it clearly. Um, Dr. Rose, what's one question every patient should be asking their neurologist?
I think one question that you should always ask your neurologist is to actually go back to the beginning and say, can you explain to me what is MS? What is MS? What type of autoimmune condition is it? And can you explain to me what I could potentially be facing down the line? And does it have to look a certain way, or can it be this way that I've imagined my life to be, or can it be different? And in what ways is it different? I feel that a lot of times when people get diagnosed, especially for, first diagnosis, someone comes to the ER with symptoms. They, eventually find out that it's not a stroke in a 20-year-old Black woman. It's actually MS. They get the imaging, they get these steroids, and they just push them out and say, go follow up with an MS neurologist, start a treatment. And so what happens is by the time you get to the neurologist, you may have done this advanced Google dive and you've either scared yourself straight or you've got all these questions, and we're trying to, bridge that gap when you come to see us. I'm like, okay, we gotta, figure out how you like taking medicine, how are we going to get you on a treatment plan. That I think that we and also the patient forget to just kind of take a step back and like, let's make sure we're on the same page. What is MS? What does that mean? What does that mean going forward? Even if you are not new to MS, and even if it's not a new diagnosis, it's very important when you have a new neurologist or you're establishing care with an MS specialist that you make sure that they don't assume anything about your knowledge, and so that you all know exactly what to expect with treatment, what to expect with managing symptoms, and to really kind of go from the basics and then build your treatment plan, your personalized plan going forward. But always make sure you remind them, like, you are new to them, they are new to you. Y'all have got to get on the same page. I feel like that's a question that we overlook, and we get very eager about solutions that we just don't take that step back.
Yeah, I totally remember just being like blindsided when I was diagnosed. I was sent home with like my report from my MRI of my cervical spine, and then it was just like doctor speak. It's like, what even is this? And then immediately was like, all right, you have it. Here are your treatment options. I'm like, it would have been great if it was like, all right, this is what MS is. This is how it could affect your body. So yeah, that's a good call out. Um, What's one symptom that patients often minimize that they should absolutely speak up about, especially when you're like new, I keep a diary of like all my symptoms. I'm like, "Oh, my foot's tingling. That's new." Or like my wrist, I just dropped my keys. Is that MS related? So what's the one thing you wish that every patient knew to ask about in their first appointment?
I would say the changes in your ability to exercise and your ability to have what I like to call exercise fatigue, or pushing through kind of your limitations on your physical ability and how long it takes you to get there. Because I feel like you said, people know I got this pain, I got this tingling, I got this, this arm that's not as strong, my dexterity is not what it used to be. And we focus on these things that are very flashy, but it does make a difference on your balance, or how long you can walk, how long it takes you to be able to say, you know what, I need to sit it out, when you're at the kids' soccer game or something like that, because then it allows us to take a step back and say, well, hold on, why are you fatiguing so quickly? Things look like we're on the right path. Should we send you back to physical therapy? Do you have the right walking assistance? Are you not using this, this orthotic? Should you be using this orthotic? Are you pushing through in an area where you shouldn't be pushing through? And maybe we can optimize that with a simple fix. I feel like these flashy things that got us to the ER, that got us to questioning, what is this? It kind of takes the front seat, but the back seat is really what I think is very what makes a big impact on your daily life, which is your actual ability to push through. Fatigue is that nebulous thing that we'd be a billionaire if we could fix, but sometimes exercise fatigue is something that we can make a better kind of progress on, or at least is an attainable kind of goal.
Yeah, that's good. And then we hear all the time, like I can't speak for others, but I've heard before that like, oh, I lay out my symptoms, right? And then it's like, oh, that's normal. Like it's to be expected at your age. Or how do we push back? Like what language would you give a patient to help them push back when they feel like they're not being heard by
Yeah,
the
I think
provider?
Yeah, that's super important. For someone to say, yeah, that's normal, that's what's to be expected, I feel like the immediate response for me is, well, that's not normal for me. That's new. And it's really bothering me. It's really affecting my quality of life. It's really affecting the way that I can show up for my friends and family, and how I want to show up for myself. And then outside of that is, what can we do about it? If it's normal, okay, it's a normal thing that we expect to see with MS, but what are my options? What can I do? A lot of times I feel that maybe there are time constraints in a visit, or your provider has already got this plan of what they wanted to talk about and the things they wanted to address, that they're just like, okay, yes, that's not important to me, but you are the star, you are the captain, we're on the team. So
Mhm.
if it's not normal for you, then it's just, hey, it's not normal for me. Tell me what I can do about it, kind of deal. And then just kind of level set. Most times we'll get out of ourselves and like, I'm sorry. You're right. Let's talk about the things that are important to you.
It'd be interesting to see people here. Drop a one in the chat if you've ever been dismissed by a doctor when you told them your symptoms. Just curious to see if that's, yeah, we're not alone. We don't imagine things. We do get dismissed. And so can you go into a few other ways that patients can become stronger self advocates in the exam room?
Yes, so I feel that coming to the appointment with a list or with a care partner is a lot of times very helpful. A lot of times, especially with my patients I've just established with, or they're new diagnosed, or they're new to an MS expert, I say, you know what? You're going to have a lot of questions. Your brain's going to be everywhere. Maybe it's just not going to be a good day with, your ability to multitask. If you write that down and send it to me, even though my chart is a little scary for us because we get overwhelmed with the inbox numbers, we do appreciate it if you say, hey, these are the things that I wanted to talk about. Last time I didn't feel like we placed enough emphasis on it. If you can just flag this for my appointment, I would like this. Um, and I'm really big on if you don't feel comfortable with that, maybe you've had kind of an intimidating interaction with your provider, or that's the only provider that has the expertise. Your care partner becomes very important because when you go into that appointment and then maybe you're just like, you know what, I'm not up to pushing back, that care partner is like, this is what we talked about. I don't know if today is a good day or bad day, but I know that for most of the days, this is the issue and this is what, they want to talk about. So I'm here to remind us what to talk about. And even sometimes if you feel like you're not that aggressive person, again, your care partner can be that aggressive person for you.
Yeah, I highly plus 100 to what you said because especially when you're newly diagnosed and then you're hearing like doctor speak and you're like, now what does that mean for me? And then also like sometimes I've encountered doctors who were like told me I couldn't record and I'm like, well, how else am I going to remember this stuff? Um, Andrea, care partner meaning like your support partner, your caregiver, your spouse, your best friend, someone who can be there for you just as a patient living with MS. Um, I see some questions coming in.
Sure.
So one thing that Deidre said was, I just learned the difference between fatigue and neural fatigue. That's new to me too. So can you please go into a little bit about the difference between fatigue and neural fatigue, Dr. Rose?
Yeah, so fatigue is this very non-specific symptom that can go across many things. It can be from someone who does not have a neurological condition where it's just they've not had enough sleep, they are not having the right diet, they are very stressed out, and it tends to be what we kind of say like dose dependent, meaning the more stressors you have, the more lack of sleep you have, the worse diet you have, the more you partied a little bit too much in Vegas, right, the more fatigue you will have. But neuro fatigue is out of proportion to that. And neuro fatigue, you won't have that symptom, you won't have that trigger. And it's really just a biological basis that's a little bit different from within the brain, and most times within the brain, but also sometimes with our peripheral nerves, the nerves that are in our limbs. That fatigue is that exercise fatigue that I'm talking about, where you don't have as much stamina. And that's different than just, I haven't given myself enough tools to get through the day. You've done everything right, and it still is rough, right? So that's a little bit different. I hope that I made it as
Yeah.
complicated as possible.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I see another question, kind of piggybacking off what we talked about earlier. It says, "How do you handle it's probably just the MS and there's nothing we can do about it?" I guess when you're having conversation with your neurologist.
Yeah, that's a rough statement. First off, let me just give you like a virtual hug. That's too much, right? Like that's dismissive. I would still just push back. Again, if you don't feel comfortable doing it, having your care partner, your friend, your support system be like, it's not just MS. It's not normal for MS. It's not normal for me. We need something. There is something to do about it. If there's not something that you know that we can do about it, can we kind of go back to the drawing board, or can I be referred to, let's say if it's physical therapy, can I be, or a physical kind of complaint? Can I go to a physical therapist? Are there other options? Can I try a nutritionist? Are there other non-neurological treatment options that maybe can make some improvement for me. And then in the back of your mind, I would say, you know what, maybe should I get a second opinion? And I know we can probably talk about that later, but that may be a red flag where say, okay, well, maybe my physician doesn't feel comfortable saying, I don't know, or I don't know how to help you. And so that's okay if that person doesn't know, then you can try to find someone who might know. And there may be nothing that we truly can do to fix it, but maybe there's something, or maybe there's some area that has not been optimized that we can get creative with. But it should never be a there's nothing I can do about it. It's what ways have I not identified where I can at least move the needle a little bit.
That's good. Yeah, and apologies to Lashana. I hate that that happened to you. There's always everything is figure outable. Um, okay, I see some discussion in the chat about my chart. Um, I personally don't have my chart, so I feel a little left out. I'm like, for those who don't have my chart, what is it? What are we missing? And is there another word for that for what us PPO people might be experiencing? I've never heard of my chart. I don't have one.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So my chart is a feature from one of the medical record systems, Epic.
Okay.
And basically, it's a way for you to, I think several different hospital systems have their own system, but
Okay.
it's a way for you to see your results, see your labs, and interact with your healthcare team. So it can be, you can send them a message, and that's what I was referring to. Or you can um, request different appointments. It's just the online portal. But a lot of times, I believe most systems, you can send your either your care team where it's the nurse
Mm.
or your actual doctor or the pool of people who send messages to your doctor, you send them those questions.
Oh, good to know. I think I just get, I'm like, they just send me my results directly. Like there's no portal, but that's
No.
great for those who have it. Another layer for you to like engage with your care team. Um, let's see. Christina asks, is it harder without support? I guess when we're talking about care partners. I personally, as a patient, I don't know how I could do it with on my own. Like I just literally don't. Even if it's just like someone hugging me, my husband hugging me and telling me it's going to be okay. Like we need people to carry this load with us. And so if you have a friend, you can, that can be the one person you tell everything to. I know some women don't feel comfortable, being vulnerable and sharing what they're going through, but it's just so much easier when you have someone to like journey with you, carry the load with you. That's just my lived experience. Anything to add, Dr. Rose?
Yeah, and I think that platforms like this are very helpful for people who feel like they're alone, especially, let's say, through community boards or different Facebook groups or local chapters of different organizations. A lot of times, people who, don't have a care team or family that or friends that they feel comfortable with. Sometimes, people who are also living with MS may be that community for you.
And shameless plug for our Beyond Deal membership community. Ladies, get in there. I think I see a couple people from the community in here right now, and it's just a great place for us to just share. Like, you don't have to explain anything because we all get it. We are all living with chronic illness. Um, and sometimes it falls on deaf ears at home because it's like, yes, your partner sees like, oh, she's tired all the time, but you can just vent and then also share your wins too. It's not always about, oh, my MS. It's like, oh, we had a time. We went to Cancun and my legs didn't give out. Or I had a good trip because I felt rested, or it was good for me to get replenished on this trip. So, highly recommend our Beyond Ill community. And we also have our private Facebook group. So those are some options for you to, just vent, just connect with other people who get it. Let's see. Back to the questions. Okay. What are some small ways that providers can help patients feel more seen and heard?
I think one of the ways that I try to adopt, I'm not always the best at it because corporate constraints, but I try to say, hey, I know everything that I want to talk about and I want to prioritize in this visit, but I can postpone that and we can talk about that later. let's talk about everything you want to talk about this visit. I feel that providers, and even if we don't remember to do this, if you just kind of say and even start the conversation with, I've got all these things I want to address. I don't really want to talk about my results in my monitoring labs and my imaging and the same screening questions that you always ask me every single visit. Please let me get this. I feel like ways that providers can support that is just say, okay, well, especially for I like to call the MS aunties. You've been you've been with MS. You're your own content expert. It's important for us to, kind of not treat you like a recently diagnosed person and say, okay, what are we addressing today? What is the goal for this visit? If even if, let's say, you didn't have a successful visit with that doc and that's what you wanted to say, even at the end, or even if you're not confrontational, you want to send a note or something like that, right? You can say, next time, can we? You know,
Yeah.
I really value our time, but I really want this. And I feel like most of us, we're in this MS fight with you and we want to do a better job. So you just saying that is not going to hurt our feelings. We're like, oh crap, I should have done better.
Yeah, I love that. And just a reminder, ladies, like no one is going to advocate for you like yourself. If it's too much, if what you are experiencing in that exam room is too much, speak up and say, "Hey, I need a minute." Like I don't have the bandwidth to talk right now. Just say what you need. And I think we all would be surprised that our providers are, willing and understand, that we need a moment. This is our session. This is our time. This is our visit. Um, what are the most common misconceptions about MS, especially the ones that show up in our community, the Black community?
Yeah. So I think the first misconception that I think that we're doing a better job with is that Black people and Black women don't get MS and don't get MS the same, in the same rates as, white women. But, I can tell you that us neurologists have been, questioning that for some time because of what we see. But now we're having more data where it says, you know what? It's not just this European, farthest from the equator condition. It's very much prevalent in the Black community. And there are even some studies, recent studies, that say the incidence, meaning the new diagnoses, may be higher in Black women than in white women. There was another study a couple of years ago that said if we look at the people in the US, right, per 1,000 white people, four white women may have MS, but three Black women out of 1,000 Black women may have MS, right? That's not a big difference.
Hmm.
And so I think that especially when young Black women and even women in the 50s, we didn't think that Black women in the 50s could have their first attack, right? Um, Women who, not every tingle and spasm and weakness is diabetes and slip disc in Black people. I think that that's a huge misconception that I think we're doing a lot more awareness. The other thing is that a lot of times our delays in diagnosis is because the Black people don't trust the healthcare system. That we it's 2026. We do have our reservations, yes, but we are interacting with the healthcare system a lot and still not getting the appropriate referrals, right? So I think that's a huge misconception where we really need advocacy, and I think that's a lot of times where you saying, what, that doesn't sit well with me, or having a family member like, does that make sense? And this time Google's on our side, right? Where we say, no, you can keep pushing back. I think that that's one of our largest misconceptions that we're actively improving, but it's still, depending on where you are in the country, it's still a big problem.
Yeah. When it comes to MS progression and treatment options, what would you like our community to understand?
So I think that a lot of times our community, we hang on to the old labels where it's like, okay, am I relapsing, remitting? Am I primary progressive? Am I secondary progressive? And those are these kind of, it's important for us to have those labels so we can kind of be on the same page. But it's important to also know that relapses, inflammation, new inflammation attacks, and progression are likely happening at the same time in the
Mm,
beginning, right? And so it's less important for me to diagnose you as relapsing remitting or secondary progressive. And it's more important for me to figure out how you are responding to treatment and how you are from one time period to the next in the future. And so it's traditionally based off of science, it's very hard for us to stop progression and to delay that. But the newer focus, as we're getting a little bit more, it's like a snail's race. We're getting a little bit more success, but we are getting treatments that perhaps are trying to target progression. So I feel that while we didn't have a lot of options in our traditional MS therapies right now, that is huge in the trials that are trying to at least report out and for us to kind of see where we're going for next going forward, because we really are trying to focus our therapies on progression and how are we able to stop or slow down the inflammation and progression that's happening within the brain itself, because that's been a very big barrier for us.
Yeah. And so when it comes to a patient, deciding they've been diagnosed and then now they're told they need to get on some therapy, how do you approach those conversations about treatment decisions with your patients? And what does shared decision making actually look like in your room?
Yeah, so that's one of my favorite things to talk about after we kind of get over the initial shock and like, what is this, right? Is we have options. It's not the late 90s, not the early 2000s. I first say that I want them to get on a medication that they feel comfortable with and that they are going to continue taking, right? It is not, a lot of times people will push back and be like, well, you're the doc. You tell me what I should do, right? I'm like, well, I am the doc, and I'm telling you, you should be in charge. Right. I'm going to give you the information. And I first ask, look, because it's 2026, I would like to know how you like taking a medicine. Are you someone who's good at pills? Are you someone who would miss a pill? Are you someone who doesn't mind taking a once a month shot? Would you rather set it and forget it and do a twice a year infusion? Let's start there, because a lot of times now there's over 30 medications that we can choose from, and they all are grouped in certain classes where we have choices, and insurance tries to push us within those choices as well. So there are definitely groups in either category, whether it's pills or once a month shot or twice a year infusion, where I don't care which one you pick. Now, I judge the other ones that are less effective. I don't even present those options, right? And I tell you that. I'm like, hey, you are the expert. I'm the expert in what I like. Hopefully, we come together and figure out what we both feel comfortable with. But the first thing we should do is figure out, do you want a pill? Do you want a shot? Do you want an infusion? What are your reservations? Let's talk about the ones that I don't care which one you choose. How about you think about these? I always give some materials. We go over like this bird's eye overview, and then we come back within a week or two and say, now, and a lot of times, especially if you have a care team, I say, bring that person, give them the link to our virtual visit, and let's knock it out. Because, Google will tell you everything about it. Let's figure out what we're going to focus on. And so we go from there. I really think that it doesn't make a difference what I think is best, because if you don't think is best and you don't trust it and you're not going to put that in your body, you're not going to put it in your body. And then we're right back at square one.
Right. That's good advice. Not everyone does that. By the way, when I was diagnosed, I was told the oral medicines don't work. You need to get on an injectable. They didn't even tell me about infusions. And I went home with like three different pamphlets and was like, okay, cool. Not everyone knows that they're like for their lifestyle. He didn't ask if I was deathly afraid of needles, so just remember, everyone listening, that you have the power to guide this journey, and ask the questions and say, my lifestyle is such that I forget to take pills. So just know yourself. Dr. Mitzi says all the time, like the best medicine is the one that you're going to take. So the one that you're going to stay consistent with, is the one you should be choosing. And if you already have reservations about other types of, the way it's administered, speak up, because then you won't be stuck. And your life will be much more enjoyable. What's some questions that we should be asking during appointments that most people don't think to ask?
Yeah. So for me, I think that most people don't think to ask what is a flare,
Mm,
and what should I be looking out for? Because from our perspective, a flare means two different things. From a patient perspective, a flare is a flare. I have worsening of symptoms that weren't there before, and I'm having these things for maybe days to weeks, and I need to feel better. For us, it's important on how we try to help you through that flare to know what kind is it. Is it that one of your old lesions is not being compensated for? And it may be a stressor. Should we look for an infection? Is it that you have actual life stress or mental stress? Is something else going on? Because that won't be fixed by steroids, right? I've gotten cursed out over that, right? And it was a UTI. I was like, but look at this urine, right? The steroids is not going to help. It may make the UTI worse, right? But if it's symptoms that are from new inflammation, we call that a flare, an inflammatory flare versus a pseudo flare, which is that old lesion that your body's not compensating for. Then I need to figure out, okay, do I need to do more testing? Do I need to do some steroids? That's different. Is the medicine that we're on not working for us, or are you skipping some? You're like, it's all right. Well, maybe it wasn't all right because now we've got, some new inflammation. But I think that's very important because sometimes I will get, like knowledge of a flare after the flare is already over. And I was like, wait, what about that game plan we talked about where you never had that before? And now you're like, oh, but it's gone now. But now I wish I could have done some more digging to figure out was this the right medication choice. So I feel like knowing what a flare is versus a pseudo flare, or basically old lesion symptoms versus new symptoms that may be from a new lesion, I think that's very important for you to ask your neurologist and for y'all to have a game plan on what to expect when you go ahead and contact us. Because this will be, once you tell me this is what I'm going to want to know, and this is what we're going to do. These are fork in the road scenarios. I feel like that's very important to know beforehand before you get into that situation, because when you're in that situation, it's stressful.
Right. You're telling me. I think, oh, I lost my train of thought. Oh, it was something about, oh no, oh, I hate when that happens. It's going to come back to me. It's going to come back. Um, but we are talking, oh, I'm looking back at the chat, and speaking of different specific symptoms, Andrea's asking, what does MS hug feel like? Is it crazy to wonder if it's MS hug or a heart attack?
No, it's not crazy at all. That's very common way that patients describe it. I will say the variations that people say, or they feel like there's, some pressure, and that's similar to what the heart attack feeling is, like someone sitting on my chest. Sometimes, well, a lot of times patients will say, I feel like I can't take a deep breath in. I feel like all of a sudden something's wrapped really tight around me, like I've got, my Spanx all the way up to my chest kind of deal. And so, but it doesn't have to feel the same way for everyone, right? Pressure, squeezing, wrapping, not being able to expand in spite of your chest actually expanding. And sometimes people notice that, you know what, that kind of went away when I took one of my nerve pain medications like gabapentin or Lyrica. That also helps us to know that, okay, that probably was MS hug.
Good to know. I see some familiar faces. Well, they're not on camera, but shout out to Tracy Dunbar. She's been to our Wellness Weekend and longtime community member. I saw Lakeisha, our advisory board member here. I saw Latoya. We love you down, girl. So thank you all for being here. Let's see. Kathy is asking, can or does MS impact vocal cords and voice?
Yes, it can. It all depends on where your lesion is. Typically, that can happen if there's a lesion in the bottom of the brain or really high up in the cervical spine. And that actually sometimes comes to us from the ear, nose, and throat docs. They say, I don't have a reason for this to be happening. And then they will, hopefully the ENT has seen enough of it where they'll say, well, you should go to the neurologist. It's a woman, it's a young woman, it's a weird off and on diagnosis without any kind of abnormality once they actually go and look at your vocal cords. But yes, it can be, but you will want someone to go, you want to go to that ENT doc to make sure.
Yeah, I remember watching Selma Blair's documentary. She's an actress who lives with MS, and it affected her vocal cords. She had like a trembling in her voice. So yeah. Let's see. Another question from the chat from Kimberly says, I'm going to back to work as a part-time employee in the fall at an elementary school. How do I work in that environment while taking an immunosuppressant? So anyone who's on an immunosuppressant, how might that affect their day-to-day work?
Yeah, so kids and daycare workers, teachers around kids, sometimes that gets a little bit stressful for you, right? The main things that you want to know are that you don't have to walk around with a mask on, right, around people, but you would want to look out for people who are actively sneezing or sniffling or those kinds of things, or people who have a fever, things like that. You don't want to get, you know, how we have those COVID restrictions where like don't get within 6 feet. You'll
Mhm.
want to make sure that you're not doing that. It's hard when kids are lovable and they're young and they're all over you, right? But you can't be in a mask all the time. And depending on your immune suppressant, it's not taking out all of your immune system, right? So, yes, you may be more prone to a cold or UTI compared to the, general population, but it may not be that you were just going to get the cold and your medicine made you more likely to get the cold. It's that perhaps if you were going to fight off the cold, maybe you didn't fight it off as well, kind of deal. So it's not enough bang for your buck to just kind of mask up all the time, because that may not be enough and it may not make a difference, period.
Mm. Keep your questions coming, ladies. We have a great source of truth right here in the room with us. Um, okay, a question from Vilma. Is hip or lower back pain a part of MS? I've been told that some of my pain, hip slash lower back, is just part of aging. I'm 62 years old and only diagnosed 2 years.
Yeah, so a lot of times, deep pain to the joint and deep pain in the back that doesn't kind of move anywhere and is not associated with spasms, if you don't have any kind of known lesions in your spine. Deep joint pain is not very common for MS, right? So hip pain can come from, if you do have weakness or if you do have spasms and you are compensating in the wrong way, you can have kind of this on the other side, on your good side. Now maybe you're wearing that a little bit more. But if you don't have spinal lesions, if you don't have weakness or you're dragging or the way your balance is with your walking, it is less likely that the MS is causing it. However, you would want to make sure you are evaluated by a physical therapist. You'll want your gait evaluated. You'll want your neurologist to know, you know, you want to describe the way that those feelings are, right? Sharp pain to the joint, not MS. Spasm, where, you go to lift your leg and now you can't, relax it. MS, those kinds of things.
Got it. Another question in the chat from Mary, is peripheral neuropathy, all four limbs, a part of an MS exacerbation? I've been treated with IV and oral steroids and IVIG, and the symptoms persist. Has anyone experienced these symptoms? What have you done to
Gotcha.
fix it?
So peripheral neuropathy by definition is from the nerves in the arms and the legs. They are not the ones from the brain and the spinal cord. So peripheral neuropathy by definition should not be MS. Now, a lot of people call neuropathy peripheral neuropathy or nerve pain or tingles and numbness peripheral neuropathy, but peripheral neuropathy means outside of the ones that control the nerves in the legs, there's something else directly attacking them. So that should not be from MS. Now, MS will give you similar symptoms because it is the command center. It's affecting the brain and the spinal cord, which commands those nerves in the limbs. But those MS does not affect the nerves in the limbs. It affects the nerves in the brain and the spinal cord.
Thank you for that. Another question in the chat, Corey, what is stable with MS to you? I feel that I am having new symptoms postpartum, but still considered stable based on MRIs. That's a good question because if your MRI is stable, but your body is telling you something different, like how do we reconcile that?
Yeah, yeah. So stable for us means too, you can't be stable without being both stable from an MRI perspective and stable from clinical symptoms, because we know that there's a lot of things that we capture on MRI that you never felt, like that when you go get scan new diagnosis, like, how did I have 10 lesions? I just had this one thing, right? So we know that the MRI captures stuff that you don't, and we know that the MRI does not capture progression without this whole progression independence of relapse activity. We know it doesn't capture all of your clinical worsening. So it is important for you to let your neurology team know that you are having worsening symptoms and you're having worsening fluctuations, especially postpartum, because in those 3 months after you deliver that baby, your immune system is turning back on again. Before it tried to reduce itself so it doesn't attack your foreign body, which is that baby. But now it's revving back up, and there may be some things that you all need to discuss. Talk to them about, should I be scanned? Are these old symptoms that are now worse? Now, I will say again, postpartum, even if you've had that discussion with your neurologist, you're not sleeping, you're not eating the same, you're not hydrating, right? So you will have worsening symptoms that maybe were better controlled as your stressors are heightened postpartum. But that's a very nuanced question and set of symptoms that is really worth you making another appointment for the neurologist so that y'all don't miss anything.
Good. Similar question, is it aging or is it MS? We get that as we, come into middle age. It's like my neurologist is saying, "Oh, talk to your lady doctor." And my lady doctor is like, "Oh no, this could be the MS." So how do we, it feels like a chicken or egg loop craziness. How do we I couldn't even put it into words. You know what I mean?
I got
So
you.
how do we push back? How do we know if it's one or the other?
Yeah, I mean, the ugly truth is it's both. And so the difference is when you're first diagnosed, you're having a lot of relapses and you're recovering, right? You're like, I did well. I was fine. I was fine. You said I had a relapse. Look at this. I'm almost back to normal. But after a while, several years, let's say 10, 15 years, or even the more relapses and activity that you accumulate, you're not able to make up for those as much. And even the cells that were making up for the lesions, they're aging too, so they're not able to compensate like they were 10 years ago. And so the MS is aging, meaning that that progression that likely is starting in the beginning is still going on slowly and slowly, and you have less reserve to make up for it. But at the same time, all of those lady hormones, as they say, are making new stressors for the body. So it's both, and it's very, very difficult to tease through. The main thing is to always make sure, are these new symptoms I've never felt before in a way that I've never experienced before? Because you don't want to get into this trap of, well, I'm old in MS. I'm an MS auntie. I couldn't possibly have new inflammation. You could,
Mhm.
especially if you didn't put cigarette down, right?
Talk
So,
about it.
or you're at that hookah spot. You know, so this is a plug for, please put the cigarettes down and the hookah, the shisha. It is one aggravating thing for the immune system. It's really, we see a lot of new inflammation with smoking and hookah, right?
Yeah.
Longer than what we'd have expected to go on. But yes, all of those things, your natural aging process, your hormonal changes, they're going to make all of your MS symptoms worse. And so, as long as you have established that there are no new symptoms, as far as new MRI lesions or areas in your body that you've never had before, but it's instead fluctuations, then you treat it symptomatically, but aggressively, right? If it's menopausal issues, then you really work for menopausal treatment. If it's things like, okay, my gait is deteriorating, now you really are focusing on your gut health, your sleep, your overall wellness, and going back to therapy, getting your gait reevaluated. Are you with the right walking aids? Are you being too cute? Should you have a quad cane, right? Like those kinds of things. We may not be able to fix it because the spice of life is we're aging and every second we're aging, but we can find little things to improve on.
Yeah, that's good. And then a question that we get a lot, and I'm sure you have too, is and Andrea is asking, why is medicine the only option, or why do doctors only push medicines? Not all doctors, but why is that the case?
I gotcha. My godmama says this all the time. My godmama is the MS auntie. So I get it. I think, and the way that I approach it is that we are not only pushing medicine, it's just that we are the medical doctors, right? I always say that you cannot get away with just MS medicine, right? Um, especially the disease modifying therapies, the ones that are aimed at stopping new inflammation or trying to reduce disability accrual over time, Those medicines, the goal for that medicine is for that to be invisible protection for you. You are not going to feel better. You're not going to have, less fatigue, or you're not going to feel stronger. Your cognition and your ability to multitask is not going to be better. The goal is for you to not have symptoms until that you're on that medicine, and that it's invisible protection for you in the future. That is the reason why you cannot only choose medicine. If you're only going to the neurologist and you're only getting medicine to try to reduce inflammation, or you're only getting medicine to try to block your abnormal nerve pain signals, you are behind, right? You have to work on your, like I said, sleep, hydration, your diet, your gut health, your mental health. All of that is going to set the stage on how well your body is able to do its natural repair mechanisms. The other thing that I like to say is that the reason why, and this is coming from me, like I don't have MS, I just love people who have MS and I treat MS, right? So I'm not in your shoes exactly, but the reason why I feel strongly about offering you a medicine that you feel comfortable taking is that I don't have things for reversal. That's on the frontier, but if I'm wrong and you took a medicine for MS to try to reduce inflammation in the future and you didn't have side effects, then the worst case scenario is you took a medicine that you maybe didn't need as much. But if you did not take that medicine to try to protect yourself in the future, 10 years from now, when you're like, well, golly, I didn't accumulate all these symptoms, these lesions. And even though I was able to, compensate for them and I got back to myself, now I'm slowly not being able to walk. My balance is worse. I'm dragging my foot. I can't rehab it enough. I don't have anything. What I had was the prevention. And so that's why I always say, I need both. I need the wellness, the kumbaya is what I like to tell my aunt, right? You need your sea moss, you need your CoQ10, you need your turmeric, your ginger, go-go juice, right?
Mhm.
You need that, but the medicines, we do know that some people do just fine. There's a spectrum of MS. Some people don't have to take any medicine and they're going to do just fine. But if we're wrong and I only know 10 years down the line, I got nothing left.
Right.
And by design, the body tries to reduce how much we regenerate and repair because that's how tumors are. So that's why our medicine and our research is behind on repair
Mhm.
because the body turns that off on purpose. But we're not there yet. And so it hurts us. You are your one person, right? But we see a lot of people with MS, right? And I cannot tell you how many times I just feel really, really awful for someone who was like, I was doing fine. Now, 15 years later, what do you have? And I don't have much.
Yeah. Oh man. It's the reality of it. How can people navigate differing medical opinions? So, for example, we have the camp who is pro-medicine, and then people who are like, I'm just gonna take my turmeric and eat well, and food is medicine. How do people navigate those differing medical opinions or just genuine uncertainty in their care?
Yeah, yeah. I say gather as much information and opinions as you can, right? Um, a lot of times, some people get on the internet and they're internet experts, but where's that expertise coming from, right? So sometimes you have to have that discerning eye. A lot of times, also, if you don't feel comfortable with what someone is trying to propose is good for you, then perhaps finding another expert in that person's field would be helpful too to see are these two people in a similar field? Are they approaching it in a different way? Other times, it's good to use fact-based resources, right? Different societies will publish their sources, and then I think it's very important that you just try to gather as many different opinions and not feeling embarrassed or ashamed or feeling like you're loyal to one person. You should just get that other opinion. But I will say that a lot of times when you don't agree with something and then someone else tells you something and they don't agree with another, it's important for you to try to find the evidence behind that. And so it's hard because people can kind of make up whatever they want to these days. So I get it. And we do push a lot of medicine from the medical community, right? And we don't have good data on a lot of the natural remedies because the data that is for those studies is not regulated, right? The design is not there. So we can't tell you, why it wasn't helpful for the masses, but it was helpful for a subgroup because we don't have that good objective design. So I always tell people, let's try it out. Try everything, like you said, the turmeric, the ginger, everything, right? Try it. If that only has to be proven in order for it to be approved on the market to not hurt you, it doesn't have to be proven to help. So if you want to try it and give it a good college trial, let's say 3 months, and see if you notice a difference, okay. There are some people that things work better for. Not all of the supplements work the same. We do know that for the average person, gut health, a Mediterranean style philosophy diet, having a diet rich in a very colorful vegetables and less processed and less sugar and additive sugar, those kinds of things on the whole for everyone, and even brain health. We have that data, but always try to find the data behind it, because a lot of people will push wellness because, we should have a healthy fear of what we put in our bodies, but sometimes the data behind the medicine and the data behind the wellness needs to be fact checked. Both need to be fact checked.
Yeah, that's good. Another question from the chat from Alita. What about memory loss for things that occurred, like forgetting where your keys are? Like, is there anything we can do about memory loss that we may be experiencing?
So a lot of times there are strategies, like coping strategies for memory loss, like making sure you have the same routine, making sure you have lists and rely on them. The other thing is making sure that you're looking at other reasons that you can actually address that may be contributing. Mental health is huge. Even outside of my MS patients, I see a lot of people who come in through general clinic, like I can't remember these, short-term tasks, and it's mental health. Oh, I've always been depressed, or I've always had anxiety. Oh, I've always had ADHD and it made me very successful. Yeah, well, your brain is older than it was before and it can't compensate. And you have MS, and that's another thing that your body's having to compensate for. So it can't tolerate those kinds of things. So a lot of times I think it's important to rely on the strategies, routine lists, but also to really do a deep dive in how's my lifestyle and what can I do to improve? Sleep apnea screening, mental health, making sure that you don't have undiagnosed things like ADD. Those are huge, and trying to see how you can improve.
Yeah. Another question from the chat about paraparesis. Is there, are you aware of, first of all, do you know what paraparesis is? And for us who may not know what it is, can you please explain? And
Yeah, that
are there any treatments for it?
Yeah, so that's just weakness in two limbs, right?
Oh,
And so, or it can be on one side, it can be two limbs, it's just weakness, right?
hmm
So the weakness that comes from a lesion that has affected that motor control for that limb, there may be a glass ceiling on how much we can improve,
hmm
but you can make improvements, right? And that's all of the things: weight loss, diet, gut health, sleep, mental health, all those things that I'm saying. And sometimes getting on an MS medication that tries to calm down ongoing inflammation, that helps the body's natural repair mechanisms, which are slow and maybe not very robust, but at least that's one less thing that the body is trying to make up for, and that can improve. I'm very big on PT. People hate PT. I've been through PT. I've been months and months, right? Like, but get reevaluated, get new techniques, because once they graduate you from PT, I did PT. I have a bad back. I didn't do those exercises like I said I was going to do when they gave them, right? So sometimes going back to train the other cells that aren't affected is where you can help with that weakness. But you are right that MS is going to give you a ceiling. You may not be able to 100% get back to where you were before. But it really depends on lifestyle, and also all of that wellness and natural non-pharmaceutical stuff. That is where you have room to improve.
Yeah. And then kind of related, can you explain spasticity? Yeah, someone's asking in the chat.
Sure. So spasticity is what tends to follow motor damage, and it's probably the body's natural mechanism where something is weak, and you're gonna. So let's say it's a leg. Your leg is weak, but you still have to walk. It's going to make that limb very stiff. so that you can use it like a peg leg so that you can walk, right? That's what the body's trying to do naturally, as if we were still in the wild without, different scientific advancements. So spasticity is really just a consequence of having had damage to that motor nerve. It can come from the brain, it can come from the spinal cord, but it tends to occur probably weeks to maybe early months after the initial injury. And it can fluctuate. Maybe after there's been years, you may not have as much spasticity. On the other hand, the spasticity may worsen over time, especially as that nerve damage gets worse. And it depends on the extent of that nerve damage. And so hopefully that answers the question without speaking too much.
Okay. Another question from the chat. Does perimenopause worsen MS symptoms?
For sure. Um, and so it will, like I said, the MS symptoms that you were compensating for, the old lesions after you've been stable, that's where it's really going to affect you. You're going to have more fluctuations. You're going to have more of that neuro fatigue, especially with if you're having the hot flashes. I feel like people who have hot flashes have worsening neurological symptoms. It's just, in addition to you having that chemical imbalance, now you actually having that sensation of heat and not, which is already a stressor for MS, is too much.
Man, we have a lot to look forward to as we age, right?
But the research is going. We're trying. We're
My
trying.
God, today. Oh man. Let's see. Questions in the chat. Are there long-term negative effects when taking other prescriptions such as gabapentin and
Uh-huh.
baclofen, etc.?
Gotcha, gotcha. The main thing, and I feel like this gets controversial with people, people read that, oh no, it causes kidney damage. And really or it causes dementia. Really, any medication that acts on the nerves also has the potential to act on the brain. And we call those things CNS, which is our, central nervous system, the brain and spinal cord. We call them CNS depressants, meaning that they all go into this bank where you have the ability to have drowsiness or not feeling as sharp. As you get older, your filtering capacity, like with your kidneys, that also declines, right? So those medications are filtered through the kidney. So you are at risk of, as those kidney filtering functions fluctuate, that the gabapentin and the baclofen, maybe the doses that you used to do well on, maybe they really give you side effects now. But as far as them actually damaging you, not so much. It's just that our brains shrink by the second, even outside of MS, right? So the same doses of medicines that act on the nervous system may be a little bit much. But I will say that the consequences of having debilitating pain and spasms, I don't know if I would just give up those medications because gabapentin and baclofen really can be very helpful. It is important that you use the lowest effective dose, right?
Mhm.
I always like to make sure. Someone always says, like, I got a friend who's on 2,700 a day. I said, but you don't have any tingling on 600 a day. So we should try that because every second that brain is aging and we need to be nicer to it.
Mm, facts. Another question from Rebecca. While on a DMT, can I still take vitamins or foods that help build your immune system?
Absolutely. Again, I would say do it. I would urge you to meet with a nutritionist. I would urge you to, like us neurologists, we are the nervous system experts. We are the medically trained nervous system experts. Please see a wellness expert. Please see integrative medicine or, like I said, nutritionists. It's very important. They are not going to hurt you, the supplements. Now, what may be good for one person may not be good for you, but that's why it's important for you to figure out what's good for your gut health.
Yeah. Another question. I'm trying to see where the question is here. It says, I I've been stable so long, can I tell you? Oh, can you tell a neurologist that you don't want an MRI unless you feel a major change in your body, or is it better to just have like a re routine maintenance where you just do it annually or so? Should you
Yeah,
decline an MRI or can you?
gotcha. I like to always say you are the boss, you do whatever you want to do. But as far as like the safety of doing it, right? If you've been stable, meaning that now again, the two criteria, no New lesions, no lighting up with the contrast, no new clinical symptoms. If you've been stable for years and you've not noticed any change, we absolutely will space out those MRIs. And we may not even use the contrast, right? Unless, so sometimes I will spot check it for people who've been that way, like let's say every 2 years, every 3 years. And I will go by, I still want to see them. You should still go see them and get evaluated so that, the time walk test that we do, or the way that we evaluate your strength and your balance, we still have those clinical factors that we can follow you over time in between following the MRIs, but you absolutely don't need to have the MRI all the time. I will say that within the first 5 years of your diagnosis, and while you're still actively having new symptoms or recently had new lesions and contrast, we're going to be less likely to want you to skip it. Because for some people, you may go 2 years without the next inflammation. So you don't want to miss it, even though you've gotten, say, I'm on the medication. Why do I need to do that? Well, you've not proven that you're clinically and radiologically, meaning from the MRI standpoint, stable.
Got it. Okay, we have about 9 minutes left, ladies. So drop these questions in the chat. We've already had so many great ones. Take advantage. Dr. Rose is an expert, and she will give you an answer if she can. Um, okay, so someone was asking, I was told that what I'm take when I was diagnosed in 2012, I was told what I'm taking and was clueless about what MS was. Is that the norm? That I would say from my lived experience, I heard of MS, and so I didn't know really what it was. I feel like, yes, there are a million people in the US about who have MS, but it's not like something as ubiquitous as like breast cancer or like other chronic illnesses. So I for sure was like, what even is this? I thought it was Parkinson's or like whatever Michael J. Fox has. So yeah. Any other thoughts, Dr. Rose?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are like, I was just doing, fine. I was just living this. What is this kind of curveball that you've thrown at me? I think that's, why I always say, like, when you first go to the neurologist, step back and like, what is MS? Let's get to the actual basics. We're doing a lot more as far as community outreach and primary care outreach, trying to pick up on symptoms, but it is not that prevalent. Most people do not know
Yeah.
about MS.
Yeah. Um, Question from Carol. Is it true that anything neurological comes from the maternal side? My mom was diagnosed in 1986, my brother in 2008, niece in 12, me in 15, and my sister in 19.
Gotcha. No, everything neurological doesn't have to come from the maternal side, but I will say that a lot of autoimmune conditions tend to be more easily inherited through the maternal side. So maybe not neurological, but autoimmune. I do have a lot of patients who are like, I'm the only person who I know in my family who has MS, but you know what? My mom's sister has lupus. My grandma has rheumatoid arthritis. My cousin on my mama's side has psoriasis, that kind of thing. So not so much neurological, but autoimmune is a little bit more prevalently inherited through the maternal side.
Got it. Got it. Let me see these questions. I think we answered that already. Is research coming down the pipeline of options other than MRIs? Is that good for us, or is it good for us to have so many MRIs?
Got you. Research is coming down the pipeline trying to see if we can look at different biomarkers like in the blood. But unfortunately, a lot of times the biomarkers are not specific to MS in particular. Um, like I said, we try to limit the amount of contrast that you will have. If we don't need it, we try to space out the MRIs. But MRIs are not like CAT scans where it's a lot of, concentrated X-rays together. It's a magnet. And so we're a little less concerned about the magnet as opposed to dye. Again, the MRI dye is not the same as the CAT scan dye, but we still try to limit every artificial thing that you put in to your body. But as far as kind of MRI standpoint, we would like to continue them and space them out, but it's just a risk benefit ratio of how likely are we to miss a silent lesion that you didn't know you had.
Got it. Question from Christina. What are some good vitamins for MS patients, broadly
That
speaking?
Yeah, that is a loaded question.
Right.
Uh, to not give it personal advice, right? I'll try to do like in general, I'll try to keep the generic. So you want to make sure that you're not deficient in key vitamins like vitamin D, the B vitamins, iron. All of those things will make MS symptoms worse, and especially fatigue. As far as things that are helpful that tries to improve your energy and fatigue and things like that, that's all going to be stuff through gut health. I think we've kind of touched on some generic ones that, I can't endorse one more than the other, but things that are very popular for people are ginger and turmeric and CoQ10 and sea moss. Some people try different vitamin C and things like that. As long as your kidneys can filter out your vitamins, there's no contraindication for you to try them.
Okay. Is stem cell recommended when all else fails?
Ooh, what a hot topic.
Yeah.
Um, no, ideally, let me actually rewind it back. So the data that we do have about stem cell transplant, and there are many different types of stem cells, right? The ones that we are still looking into and that we have the most data on, again, we have case studies. We don't have randomized controlled trials. There are some underway. There's very few of the controlled trials. But so far, the data that we have is that when people are earlier in their diagnosis, and they are younger, they have not accumulated as much disability, and they have failed highly effective therapy, meaning not our older ones from the early 2000s, but the ones that we classify as highly effective, meaning it's harder for the average person with MS to break through. If a young person who has not accumulated disability and they're fairly recently in their diagnosis, if they push past these highly effective therapies, that's where stem cell transplant is most likely going to be effective without causing harm.
Hmm.
The longer you are into your MS journey, the older you are, the less new inflammation that you have, and the more progression you have, and the more comorbidities, meaning like, diabetes, pre-diabetes, blood pressure issue, cholesterol, the act of going through a stem cell transplant, and what that means and what that has to do for your body is going to be a lot more risky. But we don't have good data on if the risk and benefit ratio is a good one for people who are not early and extremely active despite highly effective therapies. Now, not all stem cells are the same, right? Some people will try stem cells for repair. That has been helpful in things outside of MS, like joint disease and repair, things like that. But for the nervous system, which tries to wall itself off on purpose, because regeneration equals tumor, right? So it's very hard for us to get that. That's why we're very behind on repairs, just biologically harder to tap into. We don't have data to prove that it's worth the risk.
Okay. Um, Recommendations for who to speak to regarding sexual dysfunction.
Hmm. I say everybody. No, but as part of the quality of life that you should not let, in all seriousness, you should not let go ignored, right? So I would bring it up to your neurologist, and see what can be done. A lot of times they may refer you to a urogynecologist to make sure there's nothing else going on, or there are other things that can be given to make sexual experiences more pleasurable as far as the different medications that they can try. Obviously, for women, it's different than men, right? We can kind of just give them a pill, but we can't necessarily do all of that for our MS patients that are women. But it is very important that you let primary care know, you let your neurologist know, and they may send you to gynecology or urogyne.
Thank you. I think we're about a minute out. Um, Reminder that the recording will be sent out, so if you missed something, you can go back and watch. Final question. What are some advancements or emerging MS treatments that we should be aware of right now, and what gives you hope about the future of MS care?
Yeah, so we are very much, I think I kind of touched on a little bit before. we are very much into how can we attack and focus on progression. There are several studies, there are different phases, earlier phases where we are looking into medications that can penetrate the blood-brain barrier. A lot of times we're very
Okay, so okay, so it looks like it's still recording.
Okay, so let's
Just
stop it.
stop it right here. Record.
Yeah.
Stop recording.